Ladies and gentlemen, I have the great honor to bring one of the world's most incredible poets, the lovely, the talented, the incredibly gifted Nayma Chamchoun. Nayma, welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Well, I have to tell you, you're one of my favorites. What can I say? I have a list of questions here, which I'm sure is a complete shock. And even though you've done this once or twice before, I do like to go over these because not everybody watches every show. So, first, what's your earliest book memory when you were just a little girl?
Gosh, I think my earliest book memory would probably be uh, reading the book Where the Wild Things Are.
Ah,
Yeah, I mean, I love that book, and I think in a way it actually inspired the title of my first collection, Coding the Wordy Wilds of a Mind Under Lockdown, because it's sort of like where our emotional wild things are in the
yeah,
mind. And
yeah.
it was that kind of idea that came to me. But yes, Where the Wild Things Are was, I think, when I really fell in love with books and reading. But then, I went on to enjoy authors like Roald Dahl, whom I absolutely loved, and obviously C.S. Lewis and the Narnia Chronicles, and obviously Lewis Carroll.
Absolutely. So, the next question I love to ask is, were some of those early books when you were just a little one? Did you keep some of those around when you were growing up?
Oh, I did. I've still got a box set collection that I bought when I think I was about 8, maybe, of a box set collection of Roald Dahl's books. I mean,
No
it's a little
kidding.
bit battered and worse for wear, but it still sits on my shelf downstairs in my room.
I One of the first books that I was just enthralled with when I was very young, I got a copy of Odysseus, his um, the Odyssey, and
Oh, wow.
it started my love of history. It started my love of poetry. It was epic and had enough of that the adrenaline stuff that kids like so much. But I had that around until I was in high school. It was one of my pantheons, and it was so. If I can remember to this day, the feeling I got when I learned there was a second part. Are you kidding? That's amazing. I get to read this again.
Wonderful. It's lovely when you get that kind of joy from a book, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah, yeah. Okay, next. Many of us write from school, of course, you have to write in school. There's all those exercises we have to do, the tests, the essays, and all that. But sometimes there are opportunities like yearbooks or newspapers or, different literary things in school. Did you do some of that?
sort of at primary school, probably not so much. Although I was encouraged to write at primary school. I mean, I hadn't. I think a good teacher makes all the difference. And I had an absolutely wonderful teacher at primary school, Miss O'Connell, and she was just so supportive and so encouraging of my stories. I used to like to write short stories, and she was always so supportive. And I think one time I wrote a collection of small stories about a family of tramps who lived in a back alley, and she was absolutely amazing. She's, this is a wonderful story. We should send it off to a publisher and see if we can get it published. And I sent it to the publishers who were publishing my favorite books at the time, which were the Ramona series by Beverly Cleary. And we sent it to the publishing house who had published her, and I got a very lovely note, letter back as encouraging me to keep on writing. And I also got a signed copy of Ramona and Beezy's, the next book in the collection by Beverly Cleary herself.
Oh,
So
how
that was
nice.
like Christmas had come early.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I was talking to Michael Sindler recently on a Poets of the East, and he told me that one of the things that just absolutely launched him in his heart, in his mind, was his father, while he was still in high school, collected from his notebooks a bunch of his poems, typed them up, had them printed and bound, and presented them to him. And I
Oh,
thought, what a lovely gift. My goodness. That's
it's a
wonderful.
lovely gift, isn't it? I think
Yeah.
like, personal gifts are always so much nicer, aren't they?
Oh my God. And having the respect, the charm, the appreciation to take your child's stuff, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, next. Um, you mentioned, you know, Roald Dahl and the other was it the
Lewis
uh,
Carroll
Where
and
the Wild Things Go? Yeah,
C.S.
said it.
Lewis. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what other authors when you were young did you like? And also, if any of those kind of famous authors of the canon just didn't work for you.
I mean, I used to like Rudyard Kipling. I mean, I loved the Just So stories, and I thought they were absolutely amazing. I think primary school. I think I read a lot of children's literature, and then when I went to secondary school, I was introduced to sort of a much wider range of writers. And I discovered T.S. Eliot, whom I absolutely adore, and Sylvia Plath, and also the Mystics, which was such a wonderful surprise because obviously, I love Rumi and Hafid and Omar Khayyam and Khalil Gibran. I mean, there's such a depth and a layering to their words and such a wisdom to it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, many of us writers, we first start as appreciators, but at a certain point we sort of get the bug. And then after getting the bug and the interest starting to build, you start to think of yourself as I'm going to be a writer or I am a writer. Do you remember when that happened for you?
I don't think it ever happened to me, to be honest. I mean, when I was a child, I think I certainly my dream was to be a writer, like my famous all my favorite writers, and then I got married when I was 17, and I was a mother at 18, and I think other things
Life.
took center stage, so to speak, and I probably didn't write for a very long time, and I think probably during that marriage I probably also lost a lot of my confidence, in the sense that I stopped believing that it was something that was achievable for me. And so I think the writing was on the back burner for a very long time until
Sure.
my children were older. And then I think with COVID happening, and we were all locked up inside. I mean, I think we had plenty of time for introspection, and I feel like I just naturally gravitated back to writing. And then I started sending out the manuscript, and I think almost a year of rejections. And I think at that point I was still thinking, well, maybe I'm not cut out to be a writer. Maybe I'm just not good enough. And I think the midnight hour, I received communication from a publisher who liked the manuscript and said that they sent over a contract and wanted to publish. And I think it was only at that stage where I actually thought, wow, I'm actually going to be a writer. I'm going to be a published writer now. I think that's when it felt real. But I think up until that stage, I didn't necessarily believe completely that it was possible.
Well, from my experience with the Iliad, my love of ancient history began. I was fortunate. I had an uncle who was an anthropologist by training, a history teacher by necessity. So he sort of lent me his college books on anthropology. So I was reading in my first, second, third, fourth grade. I'm reading anthropology books, and and when I learned this was a pivotal thing for me. When I learned of the profession of scribe, right? When in a pre-literate age, when there were very few people that were literate in a community, there would be scribes who
Yeah.
you could go to and have them write something or draw a contract or send a message. And I thought, what a noble thing, to spend your time helping other people communicate. I thought, man, that was, geez, if I could do that, that would be just incredible. And
I think so. I feel like sometimes I was the scribe for my parents, because my parents never my parents were illiterate. They couldn't read or write, and sort of they never quite grasped English. They had sort of a limited amount of broken English, and so I felt like from childhood I was my parents' scribe. I was writing letters. I was reading correspondence. I was so yeah. I get that. Well, yeah, it is a wonderful profession.
Yep, yeah. And one of the things I have to tell you, my father, for whatever reason, he wasn't really a technology guy, he wasn't a hi-fi guy, but he was really intrigued with tape recorders. When he got out of the service, he had a tape recorder, reel to reel, the old, I mean, these were
Yeah.
console models, right? And he had one, and he would record. He was the youngest of 9 children, so he would record the parties, and they would listen back to all these wonderful things being said and all. So the thing I wanted for my 8th birthday was a little tape recorder. So I got a tape recorder, and I went around and I interviewed everyone that would talk to me. So I started my interviews early.
Wonderful.
Okay, next. Um, was your first experience performing poetry post-COVID?
No, I think it was actually sort of during COVID, sort of just after sort of we came out of the first lockdown. Because my publisher had contacted me and had said to me, we're going to need you to do an event where you're going to be publicly speaking, and I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna have to speak publicly, and I was absolutely terrified. And then I thought, well, maybe if I go to sort of like open mic events and sort of start performing, it will help me get over my nerves of public speaking. So I started to attend a lot of open mics in and around London, and then I met the wonderful Lantern across the circuit, and then he was like, "Oh, yeah, I know. Did you know that there's open mics online?" I was like, "There's such a thing?" And he was like, "Yes, there is such a thing." And so obviously I was able to sort of plug into the online poetry community as well, which has been an absolute blessing. But yeah, I think the first time I ever performed, I was absolutely terrified. I could feel my legs physically shaking throughout the performance.
Well, you've certainly come a long way, my dear. Okay, next. Um, Obviously, some of your teachers supported you. Were there
Yeah.
standouts?
I think standouts to me. I mean, obviously Miss O'Connell at primary school, and then in secondary school, Miss Hurley, who was my English teacher, and I always say to people, English is the only subject at school that I never played truant with. I truanted. I hated French. I hated maths, and I was constantly truanting with those. But I was always my attendance for English was 100%. I never missed a class. And the teacher was absolutely wonderful, and she just she knew how to sort of inspire that love of literature and its richness, and she helped, and she made you feel involved. I mean, I think like one term she said to me, "Name, we're going to do a poem this term, and we want you to pick the poem." And it was such a wonderful honor to be able to say, well, I'm going to be able to choose the text for this term's learning.
Very
And I
cool.
think I chose The Rime of the Ancient Mariner because it was such an amazing poem. And I just I loved learning all of it.
Excellent. Okay. Let's see. It's I'm going to ask you a very difficult question, and one that is there's no single answer. There's certainly not even a small group of answers. But who are some of the poets of today that you really enjoy?
Gosh, poets of today, I think, I mean, certainly Benjamin Zephaniah. I mean, I absolutely adored, and I think, maybe a shared spirit that he is also the son of immigrants, and he sort of expresses similar experiences that I had sort of growing up in the UK. And so I do feel like he is a kindred spirit, if you will. So I do love Benjamin Zephaniah. But I mean, to be honest, I mean, I also I also enjoy a lot of poets that I've met on the circuit. I mean, like Clive Oseman and yourself again. I mean, you're highly energized and energized political commentary is just it just sweeps you up like a roller coaster and you roll with it. So yes, absolutely yourself, Clive Oseman, and Kathy Carson again, absolutely brilliant poet.
Well, thank you, thank you. Next, uh, there's it's a philosophical question about poetry in general. Now, there are those who suggest that you should write every day. It's important to polish your craft, whether you're inspired or not, just write, 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 write. On the extreme other end is the people who say only write when inspiration strikes. If you're trying to write when you don't have inspiration, it's forced, it's artificial, it doesn't have that spirit, that flow, whatever you want to call it. Where do you fall on that guideline from write every day to write only when inspired?
I think I'm probably the end of the other spectrum of right when only inspired. I can't really sort of force myself to write because I mean I think there's been instances where I've sort of tried to sort of say, okay, this is a really telling issue. I feel like I should write something about this issue, and I will sit down and I'll try and write it. But I just feel like it doesn't feel like it has heart, if you will. It feels forced and contrived. So I think I'm definitely very much on the other end of the spectrum where I will only write when I'm sort of suddenly seized by inspiration. And I mean, that, and it can be a very short-lived inspiration. I may get inspiration and it will be inspiration for just one stanza.
Yeah,
and in which
absolutely.
case I will just write that stanza and sort of keep it on record. And then I may come back to it the next day where I will sort of consider how I want to continue this piece. What direction do I want this piece to go in?
Let me ask you another question. You've put together several books. When you're collecting from your writings, do you assemble within themes, or do you assemble along chronological lines, or is it much more random than that?
I think it probably more often than not it's chronological. It's as and when they came to us. Because I sometimes feel there is sort of like a semi-autobiographical element to my pieces. So I feel like they would work better sort of in chronological order.
Okay, thanks. I debated both sides of that several times, and I have opted for random. And
Yeah.
here's my logic. My logic is if you do by theme, which is I think the initial tendency, I'll put this stuff together with that stuff, and then because this way, those who like, let's say, the environmental or the political or the humorous or whatever, they'll have all their stuff there. But then the what Poe called the improv verse invariably enters, and I say, no, I want to sprinkle it throughout. This way, they have to look around.
Yeah.
They have to look around.
Yeah, but like I said, it can vary. Like my third collection, which is coming out in January, the last piece in that book is not the last piece that was written, but it felt like a closing piece
Yeah.
for the collection.
Darling, could you move a little closer to your mic? You're getting a little soft.
Okay, is that
Thank you.
better?
Much better, much better.
Yeah.
And even more beautiful. What can I say? Okay. Next. Uh, are there themes or topics that you address regularly?
I think probably. I mean, I certainly I explore themes of identity and duality, culture, because I mean these are things that have sort of impacted in my own life. I suppose, sort of being sort of British born, but of Moroccan heritage. There is like constantly that feeling of where you kind of relate to both worlds, but you feel like you don't necessarily completely belong to either. And certainly I've explored things like cultural practices, like things like virginity testing or forced arranged marriages, things like that. I've certainly addressed things like that, but I think I also like to address sort of feminism and women's voices or marginalized voices. But then I often I'm like yourself, I'm also sort of prompted by world events and politics.
Okay, next. Do you feel that a poet or an author in general has a responsibility to address contemporary social issues?
Oh, absolutely. I think, I mean, artists have always been at the forefront of resistance. And, I think certainly given the current administrations in the world and the chaos that is going on, we do need to raise awareness and to keep shining a light on the corruption that seems to be rife in the world today.
Thank you. Um, this is a tricky one. What makes a good poet?
Oh goodness, I mean, I've been asked this so many times, and I think, me personally, from my own opinion, I think that the thing that makes a good poet or a good writer in general is just read. If you read a lot, because you're not only absorbing the content and the emotion of the writing, you're also absorbing different voices, different styles, different perspectives, and this is all a learning curve for you.
Yeah, I often say you're a poet when you have no other choice. You absolutely have to poet. Okay. This is another one of those tough questions that I only ask the most intelligent people. If a young person were to ask you, is poetry important? What would you say?
I'll say absolutely, poetry is important. I think, poetry. What is poetry? It is the emotional narrative of a certain period. I mean, you have the factual narrative that we get in reporting in newspapers and in news outlets and so forth, but the actual emotionally lived experience, that is the voice that you get in poetry.
Couldn't agree more. Okay, another one of those philosophical questions about poetry. Is narrative important in poetry?
I mean, I think a narrative, it really depends on the narrator, doesn't it? Because each poet is going to give their own narrative now, and it may be that somebody else may not agree with my narrative, and that's perfectly fine. So, because I mean, poetry is a very personal thing, so the narrative is your own personal deep narrative, the thoughts that you have in your mind, the feelings you experience. So this is your own personal narrative, and it is unique to you and nobody else.
There was a poet named Robert Cole who is a Paris-based British writer, passed away recently. He appeared regularly on David Sirwah's show, Spoken Word Online, and his metaphors were impeccable. His references wide, broad, deep. The cultural significance was amazing. But often he did what I thought of as chime poetry. He would set a metaphor against a metaphor against a metaphor against a metaphor, and it really didn't tell a story, but it just gave you such amazing pictures that the
Yeah.
pictures created their own a garden essentially of ideas. And I have, I guess I internalized the anti-intellectualism of my family's heritage. I always felt that I wanted my poetry to say something, not to be airy fairy, crazy stuff
Yeah.
that no one understands. I wanted people to understand what I was saying. But Robert's work was so charming, was so beautiful. And even though he didn't really tell a story, it really gave me a new perspective on
Yeah.
on what you can do with poetry, how malleable it is.
Very much so.
Okay. Now, my last question. Do you have a question for me?
Gosh, do I have a question for you? Um, have you been writing anything recently?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I I like to write funny stuff. I write political stuff. I write environmental stuff, as you well know.
Yeah,
And very rarely, very, very, very rarely do I write about what we might call a darker subject. Okay.
yeah,
And the first time I did in a long, God, in decades, Finn Bell, I don't generally need prompts. I don't generally go to prompt events
yeah,
because I like to write for my own thing.
yeah. I'm
But
the same. I
once in
don't
a
like
while,
writing to prompt. Yeah,
with certain people, I'm prepared to give it a go, right?
yeah.
And Finn proposed the most bizarre, in my opinion, the most bizarre prompt. She said, write a poem about you're a master thief stealing a very, very expensive garlic bulb. And I went, what? I don't write crime. I don't write murder. I don't write, detective story stuff.
Yeah.
And I thought, how could I won't even, this is crazy. But as soon as I sort of gave up, my brain started cranking and I wrote something that I thought was pretty funny. Well, yesterday I saw a news story about it starts off in one direction and turns in another. I saw a story about a luggage that was found in Australia. The authorities found a piece of luggage at an airport, and they found a body in it. Oh my God, someone put a body in a piece of luggage, and the news reports went out. Turned out it wasn't a body at all. It was a respiratory model to train people to do
Oh
respiration. And
goodness.
that I can, yeah. So I've got I'm up to 9 revisions now. It's really coming into shape.
That sounds amazing. I can't wait to hear it.
Well, since you're good, I'll read it for you today. But
Wonderful.
but
That's
first,
right. I'm the first person to hear it then.
yes, but
Very
first,
honored
my favorite
indeed.
part of the show, I turn to my darling gifted guest and say, please share your work.
Thank you. Since we are on Poets of the East, let's do a piece about poets, chasing poets. I gazed into fields, bladed grass, and my bones felt the cold at Wordsworth's cherished crowds, densely adrift as the wayfaring clouds, and of Brooks' eternal England. I searched sorrowfully the strand I could tie my restless hand to belonging, the end of longing. Crisp air greyly blurs the awning, dimming the warmth, staining the sun's vivacious gold. In Shakespeare's Eden, the apple eaten, and the sins repeatedly died for, buoyed by Blake to ride. Thoughts soar, the wings heavy and lackadaisical, craving heights of the astrophysical, dawn song that sang of the metaphysical, exploding color, scorching heat, the light's birth coaxing, easy release, quenched by alpine streams, softly seeping. Browning's amour of April brings but icy showers which douse and deaden the embers. Still, the senses longingly remember thoughts of the homestead abroad, where the heart titianly thawed, and the spirit sprawled in awed. The shepherds of Rossetti who seek the flock that in turn saves, as they heard the arduous days and hours. The disturbance of Eliot's spring disturbs from deep within. Her shades paled and grey like granite. The silver stealthily bleeds out the night. Where are the mornings whose chorus awakes and makes one rise from their bed to cheerfully embrace each tiny tick of the calculating clock, the beats that race and breathlessly stop at the trailing voices in the air, cajoling the song bliss brings, affronted by larkins, bespectacled smirks, tolling up life's net and gross worth, desecrating the temple of the earth as they profit and pass on expense without conscience or penitence. Still, your presence arms defense. The oration that speaks life into living, the company of the heart's thanksgiving, a joysome gymna of poetic converse. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Let me ask you to work a little closer to the mic because you use such wonderful dynamic range that when you whisper, I don't want anyone to lose those incredible, beautiful words of yours. Okay?
Okay, sure.
Okay. And believe me, I love the dynamics that you include. It's something that many poets have no appreciation of. And you do it so incredibly beautifully. I It comes from your heart that you speak with such range, with such depth, and you do it so beautifully. Thank you. Thank you for your lovely work. And by all means, continue. I hope to hear a half an hour or more of your wonderful work. Okay.
In the key of Nayma. Not Naima, but Nayma. On a maternity ward, a mother said Naima, foreign to the nurse's ear. The shame hard to bear when asked to spell it. Eyes never taught to decipher the dark marks on paper between miscommunication emerged Nayma. Sometimes the slow, stirring seduction of Coltrane's elongated breaths. Others, the budding earth buried underfoot, fiercely erupting out of trampled soot. My chords changed, coalescing with time, a melodious song rising out of the storm. Once I was Nayma on the trail of a healer, winding through remote Moroccan mountains, a child with seizures. She is possessed by Lafrit, summoned by the evil eye. Take her to Al-Faqih. He will recite Al-Baqarah and create an amulet to scatter the jinn far. A white-bearded man barks, release her. In Buya Omar, a giant cube shrouded in black. The fearless jinn tamer riding in a tortured breast. A wrought iron fence guarding his parameters. Blood-curdling screams, desolate tears. Flagellation, hair-pulling, eyes bulging. The anguish of the lost, bone-chilling, clenched fists in chains, tug against a mind under attack. Then I was Nayma, skeptical of their superstition, pained by the forgotten children, failed and forsaken, the terror in the whites of their eyes, that they too could return home, sought after cures, the big sham of shamans dressed in tradition, searching for the demon inside me. He makes time stop in the darkness, gasping in the black breaths as the world slips from my grasp, daring him to appear before me in the depths of dreams. Nayma dreamt of death, feeling an elderly uncle's last breath, only for him to pass 2 days later. They said, Nayma has the gift of the seer, the wayward sister foretelling the fall of Macbeth. In the parched red soil, coughing tufts of dehydrated grass, the exiled exchanges of Nayma and Nayma, beneath the boughs of a sprawling fig tree, its drooping fruit gorged with sweetness, their stretched purple skin tearing. An uneasy truce came to pass. Nayma returned to London, where the charms came undone. The girl who falls, falling into the darkness again. Superstition's failure leads to the doctor. Another white beard, but the eyes and tone softer. The word epilepsy dissolving the demons, the drugs keeping them at bay. Time sensuously flowing, unbroken, coiling and recoiling in motion with the bass note of the heart, the sun-soaked ballad of Renaissance. Thank you.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Your delivery is always so passionate, and it absolutely captures, I think, the ears, the heart, the mind, such exquisite expressiveness. You are really a wonderful poet, my dear. Truly amazing.
Thank you.
Please continue.
All right.
And I tell you, to give you a break, after you read this one, then I'll read one of mine.
Wonderful.
It's only fair.
None. Coffee tastes your lips more than I. Smudging the pink plush of your smile. Cooling in the mouth's fleshy aisles. Illicitly infusing with you, but not I. Fancy's fruits find your reply. Your fingers linger thoughtfully over the keyboard, delicately brushing letters. Why not I? Verily, visions of vitality in May. Bathe in your admiring gaze, radiating in the eyes, praise, a mistress to tempt you away. The desert sparrow wakes you as you gently shake off sleep. Your attar sewn into the sheets. Death to the stirring song in you. the wonders of the earth and the sky. Welcome and celebrate your company, bursting into invigorating symphony. But none holds you dear more than I. Thank you.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I told you about that poem about the body found in the suitcase.
Yeah.
Let me bring that up here. I think you may find it somewhat amusing.
Absolutely.
And I like the fact that it starts out like a crime poem and then goes in a completely other direction.
Yeah.
And there's another one I want to share with you too. You'd mentioned how identity is a very big part of what you do. I have a funny little story that goes with the poem. Okay, this is the suitcase poem. Body found in a suitcase, number 9. An investigation flashed in headlines across the nation's broadcast station in their highly vaunted cable elation. At the local airport, not the seaport, offered just a short report of a body found. No, not on the ground, but in the news, it was a suitcase stored, abhorred. And get this, without a spouting gun, son. The officer blurted a buddy tucked for good luck in a valise. 'Twas released from its fancy suitcase, not an ermine-trimmed Victorian, Mandalorian Irish lace, but later, as we teetered and tottered near the crater later, after the besotted facts were unknotted, then revised, and ultimately relaxed to our immense, did it ingenuous surprise, nothing mysterious, just the facts. 'Twas not, after all, as it seemed, a human corpse, not a consumer, no, not even a late bloomer, not a Nigerian or some lost, long, ill-humored, blonde Norse Presbyterian, or some irrational Bohemian, or a Siberian hysterian. It's true, it was exactly like I told you. Not a rumor, not a groomer, not a feminist, a millennialist, no, not even a dockside mother's pride doomer, not a Dem or a MAGA into some right out-sketched micro saga, not an artist or a chemist, though our town could use a proper dentist, not a singer or a swinger or some kind of Trappist Buddhist bell ringer, not a botanist or a philanthropist. They were shunned and, let's say, way overdone. They couldn't pick just one, and although their work was never done, as it seems she'd been top-seated and like Cassandra somehow repeated, unheeded, they were stunned. Not a postman or a ghost man, not a plainclothes policeman, not a plumber. He was not a doorman, or at least insane third shift foreman. He never gained the sort of knowledge you often get at college. Not even some bloody comedian and a surgeon named Deacon. Offhandedly say, just a wee more standoffish with his handful of codfish that he clumsily spilt along the slippery floor to the unbridled astonishment of the poor. Who collected these long neglected loose fish, handing them suspiciously to the dish of deep-fried corn-dogged sweet delights relish? We ate 'em for the whole week till sometime last night, which just about seems about right. Not a baker or a shaker or some damn Wall Street undertaker, not a top-flight man who dropped rapidly in his pair of shoes down into the quicksand underneath, or so they mused to their immense relief. Oh boy. Instead, it was an inflatable, relatable respiratory training doll, not a kind of poet, not a pet, not a singer-songwriter you might get with a gold-dern string band. Yet, on singularly the other gloved and sparkling hand, remember to inhale, to regain inflation. And now we know there's just one less crime that we're reporting, deeply stumbling from this distorting, graceless resignation snorting. And while you, queen of dreams, or so it seems, are sashaying across the welded catwalk of your convorting dreams.
Brilliant. Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me read you one other fresh one you may find also a little amusing. Because identity identity is a problem for many people. Now,
Yeah.
poets are lucky. We live by the flame. and and it tells us exactly what we are, and we can see the evidence. But for those folks, God bless them. You know, I when I hear from some people that you say, "What's new?" and they, "Oh, same stuff, different day." And I think in this world of so many amazing, wonderful, and horrible things, nothing, nothing touches you. But
Yeah.
we had gone to well, we'd gone to a parade, okay, and a group of artists and I are very political, as you can imagine, and we do political art. So we actually arranged to have a float in this nondescript summer festival parade. We had a political float, and we had signs on either side that said, like the Statue of Liberty says, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses." Back when this country was welcoming to immigrants, to remind people. And then I had created a series of sculptures. It's a big ice cube head mask. So there's these people on the float wearing the ice cube head mask, and they're holding chains around a woman in the center dressed as Statue of Liberty. So Statue of Liberty's in chains.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Now, we had shirts on that said melt ice. And we went to a restaurant afterwards, right? And the staff of this restaurant, a Greek restaurant, they were, "Oh my God, how wonderful of you, how brave of you to wear shirts that say, end this terrible assault on immigrants," you know? And
Yeah.
of course, most importantly, brown and black people, of course. And I spy back in the kitchen, the chef has got a patch over one eye. And suddenly my poetic mind starts running, right? And inspiration pounded me in the head and said, "His name is Sven." And I said, "Sven?" So when the waitress comes over, I said, "You've got to tell me the name of the chef with the patch over one eye." And she thought for a minute and said, "Well, he wants us to call him Brandon." And oh my God, that was all I needed to hear. Okay, here we go. So I call this Stanley and Livingston Search for Identity. Ariel told the story, sang and rang the power, the glory of the stranger Sven, the pirate, who when never in a hurry, never ceased to blend, seems like a dream. He washed ashore early one morning, just a wee jot before dawning, when even the rooster, the cloister himself, was still abed yawning. His one glorious eye, no, no, not aimed forlorn at the sky, was always looking back to where they'd staged the attack. He raged back to where he lived before. He'd set sail months ago from far fair Ithaca shore and washed up 7 months later at this busy Greek restaurant door. Sure, you might guess, looking out at this glorious, notorious mess, what's it all for? Who will confess? He was swallowed up in a swirling, hurling maelstrom, in a storm-tossed sea. He'd given up all hope. Or so she told me. Iris had got it into her head that he hadn't dated for months. What was the line she was scornfully fed over a lunch of tea and crumpets? Not since dear Gerald, that wry Scot, had recovered from the case of mumps that he got. He washed up on the shore, right on the steps of this Greek restaurant's door, tangled, mangled, nearly strangled in a bedazzled screeweed net. He'd never forget. But it seemed clear to Iris. This had all happened before. Deja vu, right at her door. I mean, what was this that had just happened in this store? What was it? What was he here for? "Well, he's one hell of a chef," said the manager, left, Costa Costas, who'd seen many a talented cook, but not one who could top this. Just taste a look. Sven knew his way around the kitchen cooking, that's for sure. He walked boldly into the kitchen merely minutes after crawling clumsily through that front door. Tricia had noticed, and so did old Max. Sven was the sort of character that preferred camouflaging his tracks, regardless of the facts. Ever loose, big God, he never ephemeral with his slacker's loose grasp on the fruity, nutty facts. The patch over his eye had a life of its own. Someone had embroidered on it the tiniest crown and a sparkling little LED throne. Iris I mean, Mary, she had a story to tell. She was undercover doing research for a paperback book she just had to sell. Her research, you see, was part of a study of a life-song lotion worker who had a history with Putty. Putty, the fellow you may remember, was more than a little nutty. He had dated Lorraine, which that much was plain. But you remember he was once a sponge diver, a survivor who turned pirate, you see. He lived on his sailboat, a thrifty little frail boat off the south coast of Spain, where it remains to this day in a quiet little quay just north of a reef, out of reach of those irrepressible thieves. Iris's research on her theory of identity inspired her to regularly change her name in the fertile second half of the last century, which scarcely deserves any lingering dysentery. But her specialized research, and then there was the chef named Sven, they collided inside the Greek restaurant when he reliably assured her that she'd made the exact change once again. She had mostly a discreet relationship with Sven till late one night over a bottle of Chianti. Got sort of romantic, but Sven reared up, tilted, nearly upended his cup, paused, and said, "Please stop me. Don't, don't hop atop me. I might act with abandon, and therefore, from now on, dear Iris, you best call me Brandon." The waitress had mentioned that she used to be a social worker, but with all the cutbacks at the government, now she's working on,
Goodness, so
as
terrible.
a waitress. And I thought, the identity thing just
Yeah.
boiled in my head. And she's like, "Well, if you're going to write, I want to hear it." I said, "Oh, absolutely." So I'm going to take her a copy. My dear, could we hear more Nayma poetry
Sure,
from the
absolutely.
very lips of the most beautiful poet, Nayma?
Thank you. Okay. Woe betide. Woe betide. Land which stays hand in hand with and for the corporations who trade in exploitation. Woe betide the command where the layered withstand the cold in their homes, monitoring the ohms. Woe betide the rulers who feebly hide in callers as the food banks bear the beleaguered and bankers are awarded by leaders. Woe betide the wolves dressed as sheep who impose the choice of eat or heat, playing economic roulette as the stakes soar. Foreclosure notices on the mat by the door. Woe betide the place which celebrates its disgrace, working all the hours of the day, still hungry with bills to pay. Woe betide the government whose greedy, sleazy intent underpays teachers and nurses as their bonuses fatten their purses. Woe betide the house of cards, which collapses and bombards the battered deck, holding it up, offering trickles from its cup. Woe betide the schemers empires fallen, who fight wars with poverty's sons, winning even when their webs come undone. They are the horsemen of days. Woe begone. Thank you.
I have to ask you, I love that poem so much. And the way you caress the word is breathtaking. But I have to ask you, was my intuition says that the woe betide line is what came to you first. Is that true?
Yes.
And it's interesting, I find myself from time to time finding these what we might call archaic phrases,
Yes.
or a term that's not used regularly. And it just seems so apt. It just absolutely seems so apt. And from that, it's a springboard to bring in these other relatable ideas that all kind of plug into that your woe betide line. It's incredible, really nice. Well, please continue, please.
Norito. There is no return to Sefi, because now it's a Safi, a word to express enough that it could ever be enough. When I feasted on you through its streets and cafes, with the craggy coves and blood-lit bars, the light twisting and turning like blood, swirling, burning in the buried recall of the heart, where once its roads ran like rivers of red and green, magnificently magnified, exaltations unabashed, uncontainable ululations, a nation's pride exploding in an anthem of bellowing beeps, making moon eyes within a seafood platter, smiling as we snuck the cat a prawn, riding the glorious crest of that dawn, the richness of comfort making us better. I have abandoned the throne above the sea, its living surface ablaze with bejeweled grandeur, the bogus queen with illusions of grandeur, never believing such beauty could deceive. I will not return to your hopeless dream, which trespassed its hope on the heart and dared me to aspire to the stars as the heavens fell apart at the seams. I will not stroll on her dazzling beaches, where you gently cupped and kissed my hand where my name lays buried in the sand, the breeze carrying away hope's pieces. I will erase you from all maps that lead to you. Perhaps I may hear your name on another's lips and reminisce, retrieves you, and the heart skips. But the heart's folly will find no pathway back to you. Thank you.
Beautiful. Just beautiful. I'm going to share one more with you.
Wonderful.
This is, you know, when we meet other poets across the internet, often we're so struck by the charm, the beauty, the words, the heart that's shown. And this was my reaction to those marvelous, marvelous, marvelous poets. This is called Aphrodite on the Internet Half Shell. Homage to Raphael and the beauty of poets' souls. Aphrodite on the Internet half shell partly emerged from the tiny text carvings, a mind illumined. Sweet thoughts, like berries on a hot summer afternoon, press to my mind's lips, staining in joy and wonder. Tiny characters, bearing such weighty thoughts. Can I caress the brain who hears this electron ferried caring? Can I touch the fingertips with this typing as these words land gently in your mind, floating like Monet's lilies on our newness? Rippling words, do this small service. Press your cool hand to her brow. Trace her chin with this line. Rest soft, like feathers stroke her hand. Where mine might, were distance and time less real. Or thought, like lightning beyond space and time. The time I spend in your mind and I in yours. Such atomic beginnings in the rumble of electronic typing thunder.
Wonderful.
My dear, I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed our time together. Do you wanna read one more before we go?
Sure, why not? Insomnia. In the torturous throes, the restless hour, the wakefulness, I hungrily devour, plagued by sleeplessness, the onerous onslaught of ricocheting thought, defeated by hopelessness, a spark of jade at the watchtower, the crackle, searing paper, inching towards rest, the demons it arrests, as in somnolence, tapers, the bitter earthy timber a harsh rush to the throat. Picture yourself on a boat, a sly paper plane, kimber, a divine Buddhist quest, relinquishing earthly attachment, a sanguine sea of detachment. Sleep beckons, smartly dressed. The weariness of the body seeps softly into the mind. Thoughts halt with a grind, tripping as we tip the toddy. Then in jagged valleys and steeps, middles with no beginnings or end, contemplating solutions, forgetting the questions. White rabbits smile and descend down dim pits, infinitely deep. The slither of a dream warmly ushers me in. The sleep that I seek, the saviour I greet. Thank you.
Thank you so, so very much. I really enjoy your work. It is delightful.
Thank you. Always a pleasure. And it was lovely to hear your work as well, Richard.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you want to give a message to poets out there from a master poet like yourself?
Oh, what is the message? I think I'm going to give the message that I kind of took when I was performing at an event recently where I met a young writer, and she said to me, I write lots of stuff, but I'm not really a poet. And then I said to her, if you're writing, you are a poet. And I think that's it. If you are writing your expressions, your thoughts, and you put them down on paper, or you have them documented on your phone, it's because you felt inspired or compelled to do that. You are a poet. And that's really the only advice I would give to aspiring poets is keep listening to your inner voice, your inner expressions, and write. Absolutely.
Well, thank you so very, very much, Nayma. It's been a delight. You have a wonderful
Always a
evening.
pleasure, Rick.
Okay. Bye-bye, dear.
Bye-bye. Take care.